Absolutely. And as Ambassador Mukherjee said, I'll just focus on the maritime domain. In 1965, I'm going back 6 decades. The Navy did not actively participate in the 65 war. The Navy was very upset about it, and they were smarting from that as to because they wanted to prove that they also have a role to play. But one of the reasons why the Navy was not involved in 65 was because the Prime Minister of the time did not want to escalate beyond a point. And he felt that the Navy comes into the game, and the escalatory ladder gets sharper. And I think very much the same sentiment prevailed perhaps this time. Because the moment the Navy would have come in, the Navy was already exercising in the North Arabian Sea. The asymmetry between the Pakistan Navy and Indian Navy is such that Indian Navy practically can exercise sea control in the North Arabian Sea as and when it chooses, with no opposition of any kind from anybody, particularly Pakistan. Pakistan has always followed a strategy of sea denial, which means you deny the sea to the enemy. You don't want to control it yourself. You don't want to control the sea, but you don't want the enemy also to be able to control it. And so that's sea denial. And the preferred platform of choice to exercise sea denial is the submarine. Because with two or three platforms or five platforms, you can create a sort of zone of concern for the other navy because they don't know where the submarines are. And that has been Pakistan's strategy more or less right from the beginning. So they always have focused on having modern submarines and have never really paid attention to their surface ship capability. They took second-hand frigates from US and all over the place. But in the last few years, Pakistan decided that they need to be a better or a bigger navy and want to start becoming a regional sort of power also in the Arabian Sea, Western Indian Ocean. And they brought out a new 3 or 4 years ago, which very clearly articulated that. They went in for, there's something called the Mildem, I think, program where they're getting modern corvettes from Turkey. They're getting two ships from the US. They've got four frigates from China, the Type 052. So they suddenly built up their surface capability also. And also, 8 submarines were promised by China, four to be delivered by China and four to be built in Pakistan of the Type 03, which have got air independent propulsion. However, those boats, the first one should have actually got commissioned in 2024 from what we had been given to understand or we were reading in the media. But that is obviously delayed. And now they don't expect the first submarine to enter service before 2026. So what Pakistan presently has just got 5 submarines, out of which 2 are the Agusta 70s, which are, as the name suggests, of 70s vintage, and 2 Agusta 90Bs, which they got from the mid 90s to the early 2000s, of which the third boat, Khalid, was also equipped with an air independent propulsion system. Subsequently, these boats in the last 5 years or so underwent a major refit, which generally every submarine does after 10 or 12 years of service. And this time, instead of sending them back to the original equipment manufacturer, which in this case was France, which is what generally navies follow, they send them to Turkey because Turkey offered to refit it perhaps for a cheaper cost or whatever the reason might have been. I'm not sure about that. So all the three Pakistani 90Bs now are equipped with an AIP system. It's called the MESMA system. It's of French origin. And the only three MESMA systems in the world which were ever bought were on these three Pakistani submarines. So from the capability point of view, these three Agusta 90Bs are pretty potent platforms. Now in this situation, as we've read, they only had 2 submarines operational out of 5. Now, this is not entirely surprising because submarines have to undergo a planned maintenance cycle. So boats come in for refits at times, but when you know that there's a situation likely to develop, you adjust your refit program. You extend engine hours. You do a quick refit or something so that the boat is again operational. Which obviously either these boats are not in a condition for that to be done to them, or the Pakistan Navy is not expecting that they would be required to react at such short notice to a developing situation. Now, I don't know which of the two was true. So instead of having two, had they known, perhaps they could have put one more boat to sea, but not very much more than that. Because a boat which is in long refit cannot be put back in a matter of days. A boat which is undergoing a short refit can be put back, and made operational in a matter of days. So obviously, from a submarine perspective, the Pakistan Navy is extremely weak even now, unless the Chinese boats become operational. And there's a problem with the Chinese boats also. Now, the Chinese Type 039s, the original ones, had German engines on them. And that is what had been promised to Thailand when China signed a contract with Thailand to give them 3 submarines. Subsequently, of course, Germany stopped all export of military hardware to both Pakistan and China. So obviously these engines did not land up. And when China offered to give Chinese engines on the submarines to Thailand, Thailand cancelled the submarine order. And I think Pakistan is also concerned about this fact that they are now going to be saddled with these Type 039 submarines with Chinese engines, which perhaps are not so reliable. And that's why countries are hesitant to take them. So there are limitations, there are going to be issues, but 8 submarines is a formidable capability if Pakistan gets them. However, as brought out by Ambassador Mukherjee, and I'd like to reiterate, the asymmetry between our forces and Pakistan Navy is very, very sharp. And navies are not a zero-sum game. It's not submarine versus submarine, ship versus ship. The fact that we have a very formidable anti-submarine warfare capability now with the ASW, the anti-submarine warfare shallow water craft, you read about Arnala, ASW, SWCs, ASW shallow water craft. 16 of them are going to be commissioned in the next 3 or 4 years. We have the P-17A frigates. These are stealth frigates with a very formidable ASW capability on board. We've got the destroyers with a formidable ASW capability on board. We're getting the Sikorsky helicopters with air ASW capability on board. We have the P-8Is, which are long-range maritime patrol aircraft with torpedoes and sonar buoys. So we have a very comprehensive, and I'm not yet talking of the unmanned capability, which is developing very, very rapidly in India as well. So if you look at India's multi-dimensional anti-submarine warfare capability, I think it is more than a match for anything the Pakistanis can ever think of throwing at us in the next maybe few years to come. As far as Chinese involvement goes, I'm not so sure China is going to send military hardware for it to be sent in harm's way and probably destroyed. So I don't know how much of that support will come. But yes, at the moment, I think from a maritime perspective, India definitely holds the upper hand. And as Ambassador Mukherjee said, and I would tend to agree with her, maybe had we continued this for a couple of more days, we'd have really brought Pakistan to their knees. If you remember in 1971, when we didn't even have great missile capability, we had set Karachi on fire in one night. So imagine what we can do now with standoff missile ranges, with cruise missiles, with precision guided munitions. You can imagine we can open a whole front from the sea with land attack capability. We've got land attack capable missiles. We can open a front right from the sea and stay well out of range of any of Pakistan's assets, either their submarines or their aircraft or anything else. So I think we hold the upper hand as far as the maritime domain is concerned, and I think we chose not to exercise it mainly because we, like we said, our response was calibrated and non-escalatory in nature.
Mr. Himanshu Bhatt, the industry